Hello everyone. Sorry about that. So today we have four very special chess games here to analyze. It is the Tournament Arc 2 chess tournaments that Kureiji Ollie was actually a part of. So yes, we have Hololive in chess tournaments. What a time to be alive, what an era. This is real life, yes. Now this tournament is essentially the FGC meets anime, which, well, kind of already exists with anime fighters, but considering I'm a member of both of these sort of spheres, this has been a very interesting experience and tournament to watch, I will say. So the games we'll be looking at today are between these two chess grandmasters. We have, of course, GM Kureiji Ollie, as we know, of Hololive Indonesia, and GM Kizzie K, who I actually started watching pretty recently because I got into Guilty Gear. So, you know, it's sort of one of those happy little coincidences where I'm actually a viewer of both of these people. So, of course, I'm going to be rooting for my girl Ollie, but, you know, there's some really good chess on both sides of this whole thing, and a lot of really very surprising play from Kizzie K, who I was very impressed by, considering I'm fairly sure he's new to this whole chess scene. So, anyways, as mentioned earlier, today we have a total of 4 games to be looking at, which we'll be analyzing. So this may or may not be a 2-part thing. I haven't really decided yet. I'll have to see how long this recording is, but 4 games tends to be quite a lot of chess and a lot of analysis, so to speak. Disclaimer that I feel the need to do every time I do one of these because I got a single comment telling me to go F myself. This should not be taken as an insult or a diss on any of these players, nor should it be considered as me making fun of them in any way. Of course, I'm a big fan of both of them, and this is strictly for entertainment and education, more leaning towards the entertainment side. I'm not this pro chess player by any means. I just play chess and I watch it, and you know, I enjoy it. So this should be more considered just a fun little thing to do. Obviously, both these players are very new to the game of chess, so there's going to be a lot of mistakes, a lot of imprecise play, a lot of blunders, and you know, I'm just here to cover this in a way that's fun for everyone, and maybe you can even learn a thing or two about how to play chess. So, with that out of the way, last but not least, I have covered several other Hololive chess videos between Gargura and Amelia Watson and Takanashi Kiara, Pikami and Ina, which was the newest one, which I enjoyed a lot, so be sure to check that one out. They should be in the description in a playlist. You can watch them all. Also, I made a video on the Chess and Code Geass, which was a lot of fun. So be sure to check those out if you are a fan of both anime and chess or anime, or maybe you don't like either of them. Maybe you still watch it anyways, I don't know, either way. So one thing to note about this game, and I'm sure these numbers will be even crazier in the following games, but in this game we have a total of 3 missed wins, 9 blunders, 18 mistakes, 7 inaccuracies, and a total of 3 book moves. So this is more of a avant-garde sort of style of chess game. A lot of craziness happens, and this is probably the tamest, I guess, game. So you're in for a treat if you are a fan of sort of beginner level chess craziness. You'll be getting a lot of that within these next few games. So without further ado, why don't we start with this game. We have Kureiji Ollie with the black pieces and Kizzie K with the white pieces. So the first move is d4, followed by c6. The Van Geets opening is what the engine is telling me. I'm not too familiar with chess openings, if I'm being honest, so this is new to me. Then knight to c3, now pawn to e5, followed by d captures on e5, knight captures on e5, and then bishop to f4. So this is a fairly standard opening sequence so far, nothing too crazy. After bishop to f4 is played, what is played by black is pawn to f6. And now pawn to e4 is played, and white is in a fairly better position all in all. Better control of center, more pieces developed. You're just in a better spot for white right here. Followed by knight to h6. This is another Somewhat strange move. You generally don't want to be putting your knights on the rim if you can help it, especially not within the openings. It's hard to develop a knight that's on the rim like that, and it's just an awkward position to be because there's only really two squares which it can advance to. This square on f5, which the pawn is covering, and this square here on g4, which can also be covered if you move one of these pawns up. So it's not the best move to start out with within the first 10 moves, and it stunts your development quite a bit. So something to look out for. Bishop to b5 is played. What should have been played by black here is actually bishop captures on h6. Now this bishop will be captured by this pawn, but then you have doubled pawns on the h file, which is not a good look for black. And again, as white, you're much further in development at this point. If you were to play this, then black would have to waste a turn doing that. Again, the doubled pawns, especially on this rook file, you don't want to be having that if you can help it. Regardless, after bishop to b5, what is played by black is pawn to c6, followed by bishop to a4, getting out of harm's way. And then Ollie puts up the pressure with pawn to b5. And then bishop to b3 is played. Now, while you did push this bishop back quite a bit, at this point your pawn structure is a little awkward. Pawn to d5 is played, and then we have pawn captures on d5 is played, and then bishop to b4, followed by queen to d2, and then Kureiji Ollie castles on the king side. This move here would actually be a pawn to c5, just getting a better structure and just pushing this side of the board. So that would have been a little bit better, but regardless. And then Kizzie K castles on the opposite side, on the queen side. Best move here would actually be a pawn captures on c6, leading to a discovered check on the black king. King has nowhere to go besides this square in the corner. And then you have a passed pawn, and it's a very nice position to be as white. But regardless, what is played instead is castles. Ollie plays bishop to g4, and Kizzie K responds to that by pawn to f3, just pushing that bishop away. Bishop goes to h5. Pawn to h3 is played by Kizzie. Best move here would once again be pawn captures on c6 with check. That would have just really been devastating, but that is not what is played. Knight to f5 is played, followed by knights to e2 by white. Best move here would actually be bishop captures on e5, but regardless. Knights to d6, and then queen to e1 is played. Once again, a blunder. Best move here would be capturing this pawn. I'm sure you'll be hearing that quite a bit. Keep going though, queen to e1, and then queen to a5 by Ollie. Now, finally, pawn captures on c6, but check is played. This is covered by knight to c4. What is played by white is rook captures on d6. The best move here would actually be for the bishop to capture, actually. But instead, we got rook captures, king to h8, and then Kizzie plays a bit of a strange move. He plays pawn to c7, and if you've been paying attention, you can see that this rook can be captured by this knight, and while it will be recaptured by this bishop afterwards, a knight for a rook is definitely a favorable trade, and that is exactly what Ollie plays with knights captures on d6. And Kizzie plays another somewhat questionable move here. We have pawn to c8 with promoting to a queen, and it's not too great because you lose the passed pawn, you lose the queen instantly, essentially, by any one of these three pieces here. And a passed pawn is always a very big opportunity and potentially a win condition in any chess game. By doing that, it's unprotected, so it's essentially throwing away a certain win condition. So not too great by white. Ollie captures with the knight bars, hold up, and then pawn to g4 is played by Kizzie, followed by g6, bishop to g6 by Ollie, and then knights to d4 by Kizzie. Now in this position, Ollie plays pawn to f5, and then Kizzie plays the knight captures on b5. Now this is a pretty big missed opportunity for white. What could have been played here is bishop to e5. Now let's say black doesn't see anything, plays random move like, let's say, knight to d6, what you can do as white is you can sack this bishop here, capturing the pawn on g7, and that is a check. And then king has no choice but to capture right here because it is this square right here is covered by the bishop. What you can play is queen to e5 with check. Now let's say king moves to h6. You can then play knight to e6, and then if black doesn't see the strategy here, let's say knight to c4, you have a mate in one with queen to f4 checkmates right here. Because all the escape squares are covered. This pawn covers this square, queen right here in check, and then this square is also covered by this knight right here. So potentially a devastating attack, which could have been huge, but again, at the level we're at, it probably wouldn't be something that you could really notice immediately. I didn't even notice it at first, so anyways, going back to the reality. Knight captures on b5, followed by knights to b6. And then knights to d4 is played, sort of just moving the knights around without too much of a real purpose here. Rook to e8 is played, and then queen to f2. And then Ollie plays pawn to a6. Best move here for black would actually be a bishop captures on c3, and then you'd have to recapture with this pawn, and then you have a doubled up pawn here. So that would have been very nice for black, just, you know, sort of disrupting the pawn structure of white. Regardless, back, pawn to a6, followed by pawn captures on f5, bishop captures, and then knight captures. Then Ollie plays rook captures on f5. Best move here would be for the queen to capture, just getting a very nice positional advantage right there, but regardless. Rook captures, followed by knights to e2, and then bishop to c5 is played. After Kizzie plays queen to h4, what's played by Ollie is knights to f8. Best move here would have been for this rook here to capture this white knight, which is currently hanging because the queen moved away from a square protecting it. Kizzie then plays a rook to knight to g3. Do you see it? If you haven't watched it, let me know if you see it. If you don't see it, why don't you take a few seconds to try to find it, and if you have no idea what I mean, just give it a few seconds and I'll explain while I give you some time. So that is correct. Black has a mate in 2, so let me just show it to you. It is rook to e1 with check. White has no choice but to capture, and then queen captures on e1 checkmate. And believe it or not, Ollie actually found the mating pattern, which I was extremely hyped about. That was very nice. Always the back ranks. You always got to protect those. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, you could have all the momentum in the world, but leave your back rank unattended. You are in for a very fast yet painful death. So that was game 1. Ollie takes it over Kizzie K. A very nice game overall, and one of many to come soon. So that is game 1 of Kizzie versus Ollie. Alright, here we are with game 2 of Ollie versus Kizzie K. Let me just read off these stats for you. 2 missed wins, 3 blunders, 1 mistake, 9 inaccuracies. So this one was a bit more accurate, I'll say. Not that it isn't like a 300 level player versus another 300 player level, but it's more of a, well, you'll see. So let's waste no time. Let's get into the game. Ollie with the white pieces and Kizzie K with the black pieces this time. E4 by Ollie, followed by E5 by Kizzie. Knight to F3, knight to F6, the Petrov's defense. Knight captures E5, pawn to D6. This is all by the book so far. And then there it goes. It is knight to G4. Now this is very much a blunder, because when you play knight to g4 in this position, you lose the knight. You can see bishop captures on g4. You cannot recapture with the queen because the black knight on this square is still covering it, so it's you lose a minor piece. It's a tough spot to be in. Pawn to f3, bishop to h5, bishop to b5 with check is what's played, and then king to e7, which is very much not what you want to be doing here. What you really need to be playing is pawn to c6, just covering that so you are no longer in check, and you're also threatening the white bishop, and that white bishop must go. So regardless though, king to e7 is what's played by Kizzie. Ollie plays knight to c3, and then Kizzie plays knight captures on e4. Now the best move here would actually be this knight to come to d5 right here with check. And now the king really only has one option here, and it is e6. And now you have a queen in the middle of the board. It is a very dangerous situation for black, and it would have been devastating. Regardless though, that is not what is played. Ollie plays pawn captures on e4. Now this is a funny move, but it's funny for a very specific reason. It's funny because it instantly loses you the game. I'm not sure if this is an established trap or what have you, but I'll give you a few seconds to try to find the right move. It shouldn't take very long. It is, of course, bishop captures queen. Yeah, that pawn needed to stay on that square because you lose the queen. King captures on d1 is what's played, and now, as white, in most other situations you would instantly surrender this position because it is almost unwinnable, but in these games, I guess you never know. Kizzie plays pawn to c6, and then Ollie plays bishop to e2. Kizzie then plays king to e8, and then Ollie plays pawn to d3, bishop to e7, bishop to e3, knights to a6, and then knight to a4, bishop to f6, rook to f1 by Ollie, then Kizzie plays bishop to h4, Ollie protects by pawn to g3, bishop back to e7, bishop to g4 by Ollie, Kizzie plays pawn to d5, Ollie then plays rook to f4. Best move for Ollie here would actually be to just capture the pawn on d5, and then you have captures, but it's still a fine position. Regardless, what's played is knight or rook to f4, and then Kizzie then plays knights to b4. What is played then by Ollie is king to c1. It's a strange move. It doesn't really do anything for white. Regardless, what is played is pawn to g5 by Kizzie, and then rook to f3 is played. What would have been best here would actually be a rook to f5 like this. Just getting that out of harm's way, but still maintaining that very threatening square. Kizzie then plays queen to a5, threatening the white knight right there. And then pawn to b3 is played. Best move here would just getting that would be getting the knight out of harm's way with knight to c3. After Ollie plays pawn to b3, Kizzie then plays pawn to h5, threatening the bishop on the g4 square. Bishop back to h3 is played, pawn to g4, just pushing it, and now that is just a beautiful move there because you have a fork of the bishop and the rook, so just a great play by Kizzie. Rook to f4 is played, followed by pawn captures on h3. And then after that, Ollie then plays knight to c5, which is responded by knight captures on c2. Now this is another strange move because in theory you lose the knight by playing this, but Ollie plays bishop to g1, putting the bishop really out of any sort of potential useful squares. Again, it's a very strange move because you could just get a knight. And you also lose the rook by doing this, so it's double strange. Now Ollie plays bishop captures on c5. Now Kizzie plays queen captures on c5 with check. Best move here would actually be queen to c3 with check because that is a mate in 4. So let me just go through that. Let's say king to d1, then do queen captures on d3 with check, queen to e1, and then knight to c2 with check, and then f2, king to f2 is forced, and king to d2 with check is played. This is mate in 1, king to f1, and then king to f1 is forced, or you could also go king to f3. Either way, it is mate in 1. queen to g2 checkmate. So that would have been a potential mating pattern for Kizzie K. It would have saved everyone a lot of time if that was what was played, but regardless, this isn't really a position where by not doing that you're potentially jeopardizing the game. This game is essentially over already. So we are at this position, king to b1 is played, and this is yet another strange move because you have a mate in 2. What's played by Kizzie is pawn captures on d5. Best move here would be queen to c2 with check. Now, king really only has one move here. It is captures, and then you have queen to c1 with checkmate. So another potential checkmate there. Regardless, let's keep going with what actually happened. We have rook to f1, then queen to a5, pawn to a4, knight captures on b3, rook to e1 with check. I'm not going to keep going over the potential checkmates here, just know that there are plenty and you can probably find them. One thing I noticed with a lot of these low-level games, and indeed a lot of my own, is that mating patterns are somewhat of a mystery. I have a lot of trouble with them, and so do these players. Clearly, it's hard to pick up on, you know. It requires a lot of puzzles, and even then, it's hard to see when you're, you know, under a lot of stress, like such as this tournament game. So regardless, rook to d1, queen captures on a4 is played, rook to d2, and again another strange move because you lose the rook by doing that, and you also put yourself in check when that happens. King to c1. Rook to c8 with check. You lose the rook there, but it doesn't really matter because you have a mate in 3, mate in 4, regardless. Queen to a2 with check. King to e3. Rook to e8 with check. King to f3 by Ollie, and then Kizzie plays queen captures on h2. King to f4. Queen to f2 with check, king to g5 it is forced, and rook to e6 is played, queen to h4. Again, at this point, this game is essentially over. There is really no way for White to win, or is there? No, not really. Queen to f1 by Kizzie, king to g5, queen to g1, king to f5, rook to e8, king to g5, rook to g8 with check. Queen captures on h5, king captures on h5 rather, and then queen captures on g3, queen to d6, and what is played by Kizzie is queen to h4 with checkmate. So that is game 2, a very, very different direction from game 1, essentially just a complete stomp by Kizzie. Very impressive chess play by him, a lot of really great moves that even a lot of them I wouldn't have really maybe not have seen when if I was playing. So very impressive by Kizzie. Very much play that was consistent of a person very much above his skill level. So again, very impressed by him. We got games 3 and 4 coming soon. This is probably going to be a 2-parter. I recorded a lot.